Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is another video in our series of the Week 2 exercises in AutoCAD. And this one is Irregularis. Irregularis allows us to draw, is an exercise that allows us to draw, and it's going to demonstrate how to draw lines that are not necessarily at a 90-degree angle. And Irregularis could represent a building that would have angles like that, where you can draw walls at angles other than the 90 degrees. So a good thing to keep in mind when you're starting a project, when you're starting a template file, is to go ahead and save it right away, as I mentioned in class, to the file name you really want to call it. So you start with your template file, and then you go ahead and resave that as the file of your choice, and the name in this one is Irregularis. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to choose a walls layer. Even though this is kind of like a mini design, we're going to choose that and go to line. And we're going to pick that point on that line, or draw the line that's going to be 4 3/4 with 3/8 of an inch long at a 31-degree angle from the horizontal. So what you do is you pick the first point and draw your line at an angle like that that's relatively close to what you're looking at the length you're looking at. And you notice that there's two boxes in here to enter information. One is the length and one is the angle. If you press the tab key, you can tab between both of those. So let's do the length first. We're going to do 0.375, tab over, do 31 degrees, and then enter. And now we have our first line. Let's do this. It's a good idea to kind of dimension something like this as you go. That way you know you're building it correctly. Because if you're not building it correctly, you get to the very end of the model and it's not coming together right. You have a lot more work to redo. So to give us an idea of what sort of size we're looking at, if we go to our A-size layout, you can see that line in there, and that's pretty darn close to what we're looking at. I don't think I have my viewport locked here, but let's go ahead and choose a size that would allow it to fit in a space like that. So the viewport is not locked, the display is not locked. In the standard scale, we're going to go from custom, and if you think about it, it's about a 3, 4, 5, 6 inch object. We're going to try to fit that in a 6-inch window, so maybe a 1:1 scale would be okay. You could go all the way up to the top and choose 1:1, but to keep with our architectural format, if you go to 1 foot is equal to 1 foot, that should be okay. But you know, we're going to need room for our dimensions. So let's do this. Let's go to the one that's on top of that. 6 inches is equal to 1 foot. So our scale factor here is going to be 2. Just keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and lock that scale. And go back to model space. And let's go to their annotate tab. And just like we've done before, adjust our dimensions to fit that factor of 2 rather than 4. And go to OK. We're going to draw some reference geometry in here. So we're going to go to our Home tab, go to our dimension layer. We're going to draw a line, a horizontal line going across. That way we have something we can dimension from. And then we're going to do the angular dimension. We've done a couple of these. We've done the linear dimension and the diameter dimension, but this one is angular. So pick angular. Click on this line. Click on that line, and that should say 31 degrees. So that looks right. Let's do our linear dimension here too. Actually, it's not a linear. I apologize for that. It is a line dimension. So if you're going to put a dimension on something, it's not horizontal or vertical, but at an angle, then you want to use the align dimension. Click on that. So click on the endpoint of that line, endpoint of the same line, and that should read 4 3/8 of an inch. All right, good. You seem to be on track here. Let's keep going. So back to A walls, go back to line, click on the endpoint of this line, and then we're going to take a line initially going forward or vertical, and then we're going to move that off to the side. So you notice, in the way AutoCAD thinks about this, any line that's horizontal off to the right starts at 0. Any line vertical from that other starting point that goes counterclockwise, that first line, is going to be 90 degrees. So this starts at 0, and if you look at the numbers in there, it says 0 degrees, 0 inches, and so on and so forth. As you rotate up vertically, it goes to 90 degrees, and then 180 degrees, and 270, and so on and so forth. Use that way of that AutoCAD does this in order to determine what this next angle is going to be. So this one is going to be 90 degrees minus 16 degrees off in this direction. So think about 90 minus 16, which should be 74 degrees, I believe. So let's do this. So enter the length of that line is going to be 3.5, and then tab 74 for the angle, and then enter. And just like we did before, we're going to put a dimension line in here so we can dimension off of it. And we're going to put in a line that's vertical here so we can get an angle off of it. And instead of an align dimension, we're going to do angular. and make sure that that says 16 degrees, which it does. And while we're here, let's make sure that a line dimension denotes that as 3.5 inches, which it does. Perfect. Let's go back to our walls later and complete this. All the other lines here are going to be 90 degrees to each other, so that should be pretty easy to do. Go to line command. That endpoint over here, draw that line out horizontally. That's going to be 3 inches, so 3 enter. Draw a line out vertically. That's going to be 1.625. Enter. Draw this line over. 2 3/4. If you don't want to do the fractional or the decimal equivalent, but want to do the fractional, this is how you do it. You do 2-3 divided by 4 on the keyboard, and that does the same thing. And then from this point, there's no sense, because it's an irregular length of a line in an irregular angle, what we're going to do is just draw a line from that endpoint to this endpoint to complete that. Okay, let's finish a dimension in this. Again, go to our dimension layer. We don't need the align dimension, although it will work in this situation. And just for demonstration, we can still do an align dimension here, even though it's a horizontal line. We'll pick up that dimension, spacebar. Pick up this dimension, spacebar. Pick up this dimension. And that should kind of complete that. We need to clean up our dimensions a little bit. To 16 degree dimension. We need to pull that out so it's a little bit readable. You don't want to stack your dimensions on top of model lines. And you don't want to stack dimensions on top of each other if you can avoid that. And you should be able to avoid that. So if we go to array size layout, that kind of fits in there. We might be able to change that up a little bit. So let's try to do that. Let's take our display and let's unlock it and go to our custom scale instead of the, our standard scale instead of the 1:2 scale. Let's go to the 1:1 scale, see if that fits. And you know, it's really close. Let's go ahead and lock that and see if we can clean that up a little bit. The first thing we want to do is go back to model space. And this is kind of demonstrates the iterative process that you might be going through on this. So let's go to the annotate tab, dimension style, modify. Instead of 2, we're going to make that 1 that makes our dimensions a little bit smaller. Go to OK, go to close. And this time we don't have to do the dimension update. It automatically scaled all these dimensions down. We can move some of these dimensions back in a little bit so we don't have some crowding issues. Take that 16 degree dimension and put it on top up here. And everything else looks pretty good. Maybe we can take that 4 3/8 of an inch and put that in a little bit too. That way it looks a little bit easier, and a little bit neater. Remember, a neat drawing is a drawing that's easily understood, and you should be able to get your information out there pretty easily. So, you know, we have that our viewport scaled up and down and moved in the right place. We should be able to get that in our drawing, and that is a much better fit. It just fits the page, and that's good. There's one more dimension we want to put in here. That's this dimension off to the side. If you want to do that, again, go to annotate. Go to our dimension button if you want to do that. This is going to be an aligned dimension, and it's going to go from that point to that point. And that should read, just to double check to make sure you did your model correctly, it should read 2 15/16 of an inch. So remember to update your title block, print this out, and you should be ready to go.